First this morning, decades after she was beaten and abused in an orphanage by Catholic nuns, Irene Kelly, that's not her real name, has told this programme that she still hasn't received an apology. Irene suffered years of depression, anxiety, eating disorders and alcoholic abuse after leaving the orphanage, but is finally coming to terms with what happened to her. Irene's written a book called Sins of the Mother. She wants it to be a voice for other children who are abused and didn't make it. I spoke to Irene and her daughter, whose name has also been changed. She didn't find out about her mother's past until she was nearly an adult herself. Well, both Irene and her daughter have had their voices replaced by those of actors to protect their anonymity. And we should warn you, you may find some of the descriptions unsettling.
It was a very neglectful childhood, and it was like a revolving door in and out of children's homes. Home for a little while, you know. It was very, very tough childhood.
You were in care homes throughout your childhood. Yeah. What was that like? Was that a relief?
No, it was horrendous. I'd rather be at home and suffer the abuse at home than the abuse we suffered in the institutions. It was cruelty beyond belief. It was torture. From the very first day we arrived, it was morning time. We were brought to the showers. We were stripped naked, hair checked, and there was this nun with a big bucket of this white stuff and a big paintbrush, and she painted us from head to toe. We later discovered it was calamine lotion, and in case we had scabies or something else. We were brought to breakfast, and it was porridge. But it was lumpy porridge. I was physically sick. I just threw it up. And the next thing, I felt a slap at the back of my head, and I was told, "Eat it, sick and all." And that was the very first day there. I was eventually sent to help in the nurseries, and the sexual abuse that went on in that nursery was horrendous. It was that bad. I couldn't take any more of it. I just stuck my fingers in an electric socket. I just remember waking up and the doctor sitting there beside me bed.
And did you experience any of this sexual
abuse? Yes, I did. I was sexually abused. There was just chaos. Babies constantly crying. Either they were in pain, or they were just hungry, or they just needed someone to pick them up.
I can't imagine you can escape memories like that.
No. I can still hear the babies cry, even to this day, you know. Sometimes if I'm awake in the middle of the night and it's really quiet.
Could you tell anyone what was happening?
No, I tried to kill myself with a socket, and the doctor asked me why. And I said it's because of all the cruelty and because of all the pain. And a nun just turned around and said, "Told you, doctor, she's evil. The devil's in her."
What do you think this says for the Catholic Church?
They ought to be ashamed of themselves. To me, they destroyed so many generations of children, and the fallout of that affected generations of other families.
At this point, I'm going to bring your daughter in because you've spoken about how it affects generations and your behaviour as a mother. As a daughter, did you know anything of what your mum had gone through when you were a child?
No, not really. I've got older brothers and sisters, but by the time I was born, my brothers were in their teenage years and had moved out. My sister was still only about 8 or 9, so she lived at home, and a lot of the time she sheltered me and she kind of protected me. Well, she left. Obviously, then I had to take on the role of looking after myself, so she never treated me the way she was treated, but she could sit in a room for 2 days straight and not come out. But she'd never cry in front of us. She'd never tell us what was wrong. She'd just go into the bedroom and shut the door. It was the first time I was like, is that why she's locking herself away? Because she's crying. Why is she crying? So from about 8 is when I started to really understand that maybe I was a bit different to some of my other friends. Sometimes I had to be my own mum. She could have a bad week where maybe she'd had maybe some bad memories or she'd heard something that had upset her, and she'd just have that state of depression and she wouldn't come out of her room. She wouldn't wash, eat, cook. She wouldn't leave the house. I did feel loved, but I also felt like maybe part of the reason why my mum was upset was my fault. I was probably about 18 or 19 before I actually found out about anything, which was when my mum was going through a lot of counselling, and I started reading her diaries and her paperwork, and I started to get an idea, and I thought, it can't be her diaries.
How did you survive when you got older, you came into your teenage years? What happened next?
Alcohol kept me going. I drank every night, every opportunity. I'd go from work to the pub.
And after having a childhood, a very unstable childhood, in your family home, sexual abuse in the orphanage, how did that set you up with thoughts perhaps of starting your own family?
I never wanted a family. I never wanted to get married. I never wanted to have children, because to me, the world was cruel anyway. And it was only when I got pregnant with my first child, and the feeling of that child, it just completely changed me. And it was like, wow, how could any mother ever hurt her child, a baby? And how could anybody abuse such a tiny little thing, this little being that depended on you for everything?
Did you have confidence in being a mum?
No, I was scared, always scared of being a mum, always scared of hurting my children, always scared of being a nasty mum. I was a very strict mum, but I could be quite hard with my children.
There comes a time when someone makes a decision to tell their story, or to confront the demons, perhaps, that have plagued them. When did that time come for you?
It was only when the redress board was set up, and that for the very first time I actually spoke about things. I hoped that I could move on with life, and that finally the abuse would be acknowledged, and someone would say to me, "We're really sorry for this." But it didn't happen, because the redress board were men, so there was no female support for us there. But I got that angry. It was the final meeting, and I got that angry, and I said, "I'm not here for money." And I said, "You can keep your money. I don't want your blood money." I said, "All I want is an apology. I just want someone to say, we're sorry."
And did someone?
No, I think it'll always be with me, and not something that I will ever forget. Or, I'm dealing with it. I'm learning to live with it. Through me counselling, I do have very bad days when I just don't want to get up, and I just don't want to carry on. I just don't want to breathe sometimes.
Take us through when you went back to the orphanage.
All that remained was the front wall, and I was devastated, because I felt if I could walk into that building and then just walk back out, it was like I was freeing myself. I promised I'd go back there and free that little girl, which was myself. And I think I've actually done that. That little girl needs to see her children. She needs to see her grandchildren. She needs to see that life is better.
Have you seen a change in your mother since these meetings and the counselling session?
Yeah, that was the first time ever that I'd heard anything like this. And from then on I thought, maybe growing up she was harsh on me because she didn't know how else to deal with it. And she didn't do it to be horrible. She did it because she didn't want me to know the truth. Whereas before I was trapped in that house and I had nowhere else to go. So we had a bad relationship. But the past couple of years it's been really good.
probably not surprising to many people how abuse can come down through the generations and affect your life forever. What would you say to anyone now who perhaps has gone through this, hasn't yet confronted what's happened to them?
There is help out there. It's just learning to actually live with it and be okay. Well, you know, as okay as you can be. I'm actually a survivor and I feel much better myself. And anybody who's scared about confronting this, or, you know, it's very hard at the start, it's very tough, but it takes a long time to be able to sort of learn to live with that and to be happier. And I have to say, I'm quite happy.